Ripa and Mark Consuelos have been public figures for decades, with their relationship blossoming in the spotlight. From their elopement in 1996 to raising three children, Michael, born 1997, Lola, born 2001, and Joaquin, born 2003, much of their family life has unfolded before audiences. As Ripa's career on Live flourished and Consuelos gained recognition on various television shows, their family became part of their public identity. The couple frequently shared anecdotes about their children on air, posted family photos on social media, and occasionally included their kids in professional projects. This created a narrative of a tight, supportive, and somewhat traditionally structured celebrity family. Their children grew up accustomed to cameras, interviews, and public recognition, with their milestones and achievements often becoming part of their parents' public storytelling. For years, this approach seemed to work seamlessly. Sharing family moments built relatability with audiences, humanized the celebrities, and created a wholesome brand image. Fans felt they knew the Consuelos children, celebrating Michael's baseball achievements, Lola's artistic pursuits, and Joaquin's high school graduation alongside the famous parents. However, this public parenting approach carried inherent tensions. Each shared story, photograph, or anecdote contributed to a digital footprint the children hadn't chosen for themselves. As the children matured into adolescence and young adulthood, the implications of this public exposure became more complex. What began as cute childhood stories evolved into potentially sensitive information about teenagers and young adults navigating their identities. In their emotional confession, Ripa and Consuelos described a gradual realization that began as their children entered their late teens and young 20s. They noticed subtle shifts, requests not to share certain stories on air, hesitation before family photos, and conversations about privacy with their children. The parents began to understand that their children were developing public identities separate from their famous parents, identities that needed room to grow without constant association with their family name. This awakening didn't happen overnight, but through a series of reflective moments. Consuelos described a particular conversation with one of their children who expressed discomfort with a childhood story that had become part of Ripa's standard interview repertoire. The child explained that while the story was funny, it didn't align with how they wanted to present themselves as a young adult. This moment of recognition became a catalyst for broader reflection. The complication extended beyond television interviews to the permanence of digital content. Stories shared years earlier remained accessible online, photographs continued to circulate, and the children's childhoods were documented in public archives. As social media evolved, and employers, college admissions officers, and peers began routinely searching digital histories, the stakes of this public exposure increased significantly. Ripa noted in the interview that while she and Consuelos had chosen public careers and accepted the loss of privacy that accompanied them, their children had made no such choice. The realization that their parenting approach needed to adapt to their children's right to privacy represented a significant ethical and emotional pivot. The dramatic headline, "We cut our kids out," suggested a more extreme action than what Ripa and Consuelos actually described. In context, their decision was less about severing ties and more about establishing healthy boundaries between their public careers and their children's private lives. They explained this as a process of cutting out references, stories, and photographs from their professional content, not from their family life. The couple described implementing several specific changes: consultation before sharing, establishing a rule where they would ask for explicit permission before mentioning any of their children in interviews or on social media, historical content review, going back through their social media archives and removing photos or stories that their children felt uncomfortable having publicly available, professional boundaries, making a conscious effort to keep their children separate from their professional branding, turning down opportunities that would feature their children prominently, and narrative shift, changing how they spoke about parenting in public forums, focusing more on general experiences rather than specific stories about their children. Both Ripa and Consuelos became emotional when discussing this transition, explaining that it represented more than just a practical change in their public communication. For Ripa especially, whose career has been built on relatable storytelling that often included family anecdotes, this shift required reimagining her professional persona. She described feeling a sense of loss, not of her relationship with her children, but of a familiar way of connecting with her audience. Consuelos emphasized the parental guilt intertwined with this realization. They questioned whether they had already shared too much, whether they had inadvertently compromised their children's privacy during formative years, and whether this adjustment came too late. These emotions were compounded by public scrutiny, as any change in their sharing habits sparked speculation about family problems. The Consuelos family's experience reflects a broader cultural conversation about the children of celebrities. From the famous Kirk Douglas byline in Hollywood contracts that protected celebrities' children from being photographed without permission, to modern discussions about sharenting, parents oversharing about children on social media, the tension between public interest and private rights has always existed. Recently, several celebrity children have spoken out about the difficulties of growing up in the spotlight. The children of actors, musicians, and public figures have described feeling that their childhoods were commodified, their identities predetermined by public perception, and their mistakes amplified beyond normal adolescent experimentation. Some have pursued legal action to have childhood images removed from the internet, or to control narratives about their lives. Ripa and Consuelos' decision aligns with a growing movement among celebrity parents to protect their children's privacy. Stars like Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard, who famously pixelate their children's faces in social media posts, and others who refuse to share their children's names publicly, represent this shifting approach to celebrity parenting in the digital age. Beyond celebrity culture, Ripa and Consuelos' experience resonates with the challenges faced by all parents in the social media era. Ordinary families grapple with similar questions. How much should we share about our children online? What will they think of their digital footprint when they're older? When does sharing cross from documenting family life to creating a public identity for someone without their consent? Studies on sharenting reveal complicated terrain. On one hand, sharing children's milestones helps build community and support networks for parents. On the other, it creates permanent digital records that children might later resent. Some researchers have even suggested that oversharing might violate children's future right to privacy and self-determination. Ripa and Consuelos, despite their celebrity status, tapped into this universal parenting dilemma. Their very public adjustment to boundaries highlighted questions every social media-using parent eventually faces as their children mature. An important aspect of Ripa and Consuelos' confession was their acknowledgement that their relationship with their children had naturally evolved as the children became adults. The cutting out wasn't just about public representation, but reflected healthy transition in family dynamics. As adult children establish independence, the parental role necessarily shifts from manager to consultant, from primary decision-maker to supportive observer. The couple described this transition as a bittersweet one. They celebrated their children's independence and admired the adults they had become, while simultaneously mourning the end of more actively involved parenting phases. Ripa noted that respecting their children's privacy was part of respecting their adulthood, acknowledging that their stories were no longer hers to tell without permission. Implementing these changes required extensive family communication. The Consuelos family reportedly had several family meetings where they discussed comfort levels, boundaries, and expectations. These conversations weren't always easy. They involved acknowledging past discomforts, expressing current needs, and negotiating between family members with different perspectives on privacy. What emerged from these discussions was a new family agreement about public sharing. They established guidelines that respected each child's individual preferences, as one child might be more comfortable with certain types of sharing than another, while creating consistent family standards. This process of collaborative boundary setting itself strengthened family relations as it demonstrated mutual respect and adaptability.
For Consuelos, this shift coincided with their transition to empty nesters as their youngest child left for college. Professionally, they faced the challenge of rebranding their public personas away from parents of young children to something new. Ripa's role on Live had long incorporated her identity as a busy mother, and she needed to find new ways to connect with audiences that respected her children's privacy. Interestingly, this limitation sparked creativity. Ripa began exploring different topics, sharing more about her marriage, her personal growth, and her perspectives on work-life balance as an experienced professional rather than as an active parent. Consuelos, meanwhile, focused more on his acting career and his role as a producer, allowing his professional identity to stand more independently. The public reaction to their decreased sharing about their children was mixed.